Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Dear Masuma, the show that seeks to answer your deepest queries and concerns. My name is Sana Araji and I'm here with Masuma Ja'far. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
How are you today?
Alhamdulillah. How about yourself?
Alhamdulillah. It's always nice to have you again, answering some more questions, inshallah. Keep continuing to send in your questions and we'll put them forward to Sister Masuma, inshallah, to answer them for you. So we'll just go ahead straight to the question.
Mm-hmm.
Dear Masuma, I wanted to ask, is it healthy for a man to have more than one wife? I read it's also healthy for a woman too, as they have female companions. Sorry. Yes.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Yeah. I think this is a really good topic to talk about. I think it's something that we don't tend to talk about. So I thank the person for writing this question.
Indeed, yeah.
Is it healthy? I'm not sure if it's healthy as such. Is it hassle? Yes, very much so. I feel like if it was easy, more men would be doing it. Yeah. The ruling is there that they can. The fact that there's a very low percentage of men who actually have more than one wife shows how difficult it must be.
Of course, yeah.
If we look at the ruling in the Holy Quran, in Surah Nisa, Surah number 4, verse 3, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells them to marry 2, 3 or 4.
Okay.
But then it continues, but if you fear that you will not do justice between them, then marry only one.
Okay.
It's very interesting how Allah's written this in the Holy Quran. The fact that He doesn't start off with marry one.
Yeah.
He says marry 2, 3 or 4. And then He doesn't say if you can't keep justice, marry only one. He says if you think you cannot keep justice, then marry only one. So even if there's a thought that you will not be able to keep justice between them, then only marry one.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so it's not that, okay, let's try it and see if I can do it. If I can't, then I'll only marry one.
Right.
It's a matter of, okay, I need to think this through. Do I have it in me? Am I someone who can actually keep justice between my wives? If not, then I shouldn't.
Okay.
Okay. But the way the verse is written, some people, some of Mufassirin actually say it shows that God wants you to marry more than one, because He starts off with 2, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
It's like, for example, if I say to you, if you're inviting me to dinner, and I say to you, okay, can you make a starter, a main meal, and dessert?
Okay.
But if you can't, then only make the main meal. What I really want is for you to make all 3.
Right.
But I know you may not be able to, so then I give you the option of only making the main meal.
Okay.
Yeah? In the same way, God's actually telling men, there's a need. And we see that very clearly. Within every community, there are women who are not getting married, not because they don't want to, but because there are not men there.
Okay.
There are not enough men there. Okay? So there is a need within the communities. So there is a wisdom behind this.
Mm-hmm.
And God's telling men, you need to marry. I'd prefer you to marry 2, 3 or 4. But I know it's going to be difficult. I know you may not be able to keep justice, and you need to think about it before you do it. Think about whether you can keep justice. If you can't, then please just marry one. Just stick to one.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and if you ask any man, he'll tell you how difficult it is to maintain one wife.
Exactly.
Let alone have more than one.
It's
I
true,
think it's in theory, it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But in practice, it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
And I actually see this as something that is for the women rather than the men. From the perspective of, if I'm looking at it from the perspective of, if I'm a woman and I'm not married,
Mm-hmm.
then by someone else marrying me will give me rights rather than someone just having an affair with me.
Okay.
And the sad thing is, Islam has been put down for allowing men to have more than one wife. But it's totally okay for men to have affairs.
I know,
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And in an affair, the woman has no rights whatsoever. She's literally being used and abused by the man.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, at least as a wife, I have rights. I have, rights while he's living. I have rights when he passes away. My children are legitimate. He has to take care of them. There has to be justice between the way he treats, his wife, his first wife and the second wife. There has to be justice in the amount of time he spends, justice in the amount of money he gives us, justice in the houses that he puts us up in,
Mm-hmm.
All of this has to come into play. So it actually gives me more rights as a woman than if this law wasn't there. And
still, many women would rather not, well, actually, wouldn't want to be a second wife or...
You'd be surprised. I think many women who are already married wouldn't want their husbands to have a second wife. I agree, totally.
Okay.
And I would ask them why.
Okay.
And a lot of it is down to he's mine. He belongs to me. Why do I have to share him?
Yeah.
Again, nothing belongs to us. Everything belongs to Allah. And who am I to tell my husband not to do something which would help my sisters get closer to Allah? What right do I have to stop my husband from doing that if he feels he can maintain justice?
Yeah.
And again, it's a huge burden.
It is, yeah.
Emotionally, physically, financially, because most wives will not live together. And again, I love the way this person's written. I read it's also healthy for the women too, as they have female companions. Generally, the wives will ask for separate homes, so they will not have, be companions, and they will not sort of be, in the olden days, yes, you'd all live together and everything, but nowadays I don't think that works generally.
If you look at like the history of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam and his wives that he had married, they seemed like they were companions. I feel like a long time ago.
Prophet Ibrahim?
Prophet Yusuf, wasn't it? Or am I saying that incorrectly? There was a prophet where they had more than one wives, and they were...
Well, a lot of the prophets
they
did.
were companions.
A lot of the prophets did, and a lot of the Aima had more than one wives, and they all used to live together.
And they used to get on so.
But again, the mentality
well.
there was totally different to the mentality nowadays, right?
Yeah.
We've evolved so much, and I'm not saying in a good way or in a bad way.
Okay.
But there's been, there's a different way of thinking nowadays. Women used to get married, men used to get married very, very much younger in those days, whereas now it's not the norm.
Yeah.
Women would not go out and study, whereas now it's the norm. So there's lots of different things that have changed. And it doesn't mean it's wrong. But what I'm saying is, we have to take into consideration that changes have happened. So for a man to expect him to get married and have his second wife move in with the first wife, it probably won't happen.
No.
So he's looking at having two houses.
Which is very difficult in today's day and age.
Exactly.
You can barely have one house.
Exactly. And then he can't ask his wife to go out and work, because that's not his right to do. If she chooses to help him out, that's different.
Yeah.
But he has to provide for both those wives.
That's what I mean. So it's actually more. It's actually more of a stress than it is. So it's actually more. They probably feel it's more unhealthy for them than it is healthy.
Probably, yeah, exactly. And then I think it's really difficult. And then also the children, and ensuring that all the children know each other, because again, the children are brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
So they may be living in separate houses, but they need to know each other. They need to get on with each other. He needs to maintain the time he spends with. It's like, again, it's like he may want to spend some time with one wife. But if it's the turn of the other wife, then he has to do that. So it's not about following his desires, but actually making sure that he maintains justice. Yeah. It's really, really difficult.
Everything has to be scheduled accordingly.
Exactly. And it's not as easy
timetabled in. So, this at this time, at this day, I'm with this side.
Yeah.
It's quite intense if you think about it.
It is very intense. And I think, honestly, from the guy's perspective, I think it's very, very difficult.
It is
from the woman's perspective, I feel like... those who are not married, it gives them rights. It gives them hope. It it allows them a choice. For the women who are married, I feel like there can be growth there. If we can learn to realize that nothing belongs to me, neither my husband, neither my children, nothing belongs to me. Everything is Allah's, and He's given it to me with conditions, or in order to fulfill my growth towards Him. And if it was someone I loved, if it was my sister or my daughter who wasn't getting married, would I not want her to at least, even if it means getting married as a second wife, at least she experiences that love of marriage. At least she experiences that relationship with a man, and has the option of having children. It's like, you think about it, if it was my daughter and she wasn't getting married, and I know that she won't be able to have children, she won't ever be able to experience that love for her husband, she won't be able to experience loving her, having a child grow inside her, loving that child. I will never become a grandmother, you know, all of these things. Then I will look at it differently. And I've spoken to women who've not got married, who are older, you know, who've tried to get married and they haven't been able to. And they always say the same, you know, the ones that I've spoken to, they all sort of say, if you'd asked me initially, I would have said to you, there's no way I'm going to be a second wife. But now it's something I would consider, because, you know what, if that's the only way I can get married, then why wouldn't I? But because it's something that's so frowned upon, it's very difficult to then go down that route. And again, why are we frowning on something that God has made acceptable?
No, it's true. It's just, I mean, me personally, I still don't understand why it's needed. I know you've explained that there is a need, but I still don't see that need. I feel like where we know the surroundings we're living, I feel there are men that are not married. I feel a lot of men are not getting married, and they're staying unmarried for a lot, until their 40s or.
But then when they do get married, they get married to younger women.
Yeah.
So the older ones get left behind.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So there's a time frame sort of after which you pass where you may not get married.
Okay.
And it's sad that you've never experienced that. At least if you've got married and maybe you got divorced, God forbid, maybe God forbid your husband passed away. At least you experienced
being married.
And I think that's huge. I think I need to actually think about: am I looking at the other women as my sisters? Mm-hmm. Like I would want, and am I wanting for them what I want for myself? Again, the hadith which says, want for others what you want for yourself.
Yeah.
I would want for me to get married, and I am married, and I'm happily married. It's like, why do I not want that for my sisters in faith?
It's such a test in faith, I must say. It's not something that is easy for
no, of course
someone
not.
to
And anything
digest.
that allows growth is not easy.
No.
But it's, again, sort of reflecting on it. And you may actually think, you know what, no, this isn't something I'm okay with. And again, if you're not okay with it, if you haven't got it in you, God won't put that in your life.
Okay.
The fact that if it does happen, then know that you have the strength within you to be able to cope with this.
SubhanAllah, yeah.
And it's not about him and what his niyyah is. It's about you and whether you can handle it. So if he's doing it with the wrong niyyah, then that's his journey with God. That's his accountability with God. And guaranteed, if he's not done it with the right niyyah, he will not be able to maintain justice, and he will find it even more difficult than it would be.
Yeah.
But you have to know that if you're put in that situation, even if it is through his choices, God won't abandon you, and he'll give you the strength to be able to cope with it and grow from this and grow closer to God.
I think that's why a lot of women are not so comfortable with it, because they see it as in a man is doing it not for the intention to save the Islamic Ummah or to help Muslim women. It's for their own. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that. But again, what right do we have to judge someone else's intention? Even if it's my husband, I'm not in his mind. I'm not in his heart. I don't know what truly his intention is. So I really have no right to judge his intention.
No.
And it's his journey with God.
Yeah, I guess so.
And honestly, if it was out of lust and desire, and he wouldn't take on a second wife. There are other ways he would fulfill that, which could be done in a halal way. So I feel like if he's taking on a second wife, that's huge. And there must be a little bit more than just lust and desire that's pushing him to do that. Again, we don't know what the intention is, and I think that's what we need to. And one of the questions that I constantly think about and reflect on is, God decides whether a child is born a male or female.
Right, okay.
Why wouldn't, we're told that there are less men because, one, the percentage of men being born to women is less. Mm-hmm. Secondly, the men tend to go to war and things like that, and, much more risky jobs and things like that, so they die
during
more.
those, yeah.
Thirdly, women's life expectancy is greater than men's, and that's why there's more women than men.
Right, okay.
So, obviously God knew all of this.
Yeah.
Why would he not make sure that there are more men born than women? And that way then every single woman would have a man, and we wouldn't have this need to have more than one wife.
Yeah.
And again, there's a wisdom behind it all. I don't know, but to me it's like, honestly, I feel like everything boils down to breaking your ego.
Right.
Including marriage. I feel like marriage is the best place to break your ego, because you're living in such close proximity with someone, and a lot of the arguments happen from an ego perspective. How dare he talk to me like that? You know, how dare he, you know, treat me like that? Where is the respect? It comes from an ego perspective. Whereas if I can break my ego for Allah, not for my husband, and therefore then I am growing towards Allah, I am perfecting my own self, I won't get pulled into these arguments.
Okay.
And also I won't feel like anything belongs to me. That ego is what holds on to things and, you know, attaches to things. So it's again, it's about my growth, and also the fact that Allah says that men are allowed to marry more than one, whereas women aren't. So God knows how He's created us and what abilities He's innately put in us that allows us to be okay with this. And when we can take out those abilities within which He's put in us, we can actually grow from that.
Okay.
So it's recognizing that God's created me as a woman, so I have the ability to be okay with this. And again, me specifically as Masuma, if my husband does this, then again, know that I am okay with it. I will be okay with it because God's given me the tools to be able to handle it.
And yeah, no, how you've put it is in a very good way. But also what I was thinking was a lot of women tend to think that their husband will marry a second wife because they're not good enough. So that can also, I'm not saying that's the case,
Yeah.
but a lot of women do think that, or I haven't given him boys, or I mean, is that okay for a man to want to remarry if he wants, I don't know, more children? Or
I think for him to want children can be a reason.
Okay.
But to have a specific gender of children,
is not.
I don't think so, because again, that comes from the guy, not from the genes come from the guy,
exactly,
which decides whether it's a male or a female.
Which makes me laugh sometimes when I feel when some men will say, "Oh, she hasn't given me this." It's like, well, you know, it's from your your side. It's actually
so even if you marry another woman, you're still going to produce the same. So I think that's wrong. When it comes to what about a woman? If a man can't give her children, how does that work then?
Yes.
I suppose then you could, if it is something that you're finding really difficult to cope with and to handle, then you can go to the marriage and actually have that conversation. And I cannot continue with this relationship because I'm finding it really, really difficult that my husband cannot give me children.
Right.
But then there would be divorce, and then you'd get married to someone else.
Okay.
But again, it's coming up from the perspective of, honestly, in the end, I feel like children is something that God gives.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't use that as an excuse, as a reason, to marry someone else.
Okay.
Or to break up my marriage because of this. Because I feel like if I'm meant to have, then God would give me it. There's a reason God's not giving me. God doesn't keep something away because, for the fun of it, or because He doesn't have enough to give around.
Okay.
He's keeping it away because I'm not ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe actually think about, what do I need to change in myself? What do I need to change in my relationship in order for me to then have children in that relationship?
Yeah.
Maybe God's got something bigger in plan for me, which doesn't involve children, where the children may be a hindrance. So again, thinking a bit like that from that perspective. But I think from here, when we talk about polygamy, I think as a woman, I need to look at my own relationship with God.
Okay.
How comfortable I am with God's rulings. And again, because this is in the Holy Quran, I can't say it doesn't exist. Some people say, well, God says that, He actually says, and they will not be able to maintain justice, so that means that they shouldn't get married. Again, I think it's each man's individual decision on whether he can or not, and that's his accountability with God. I can't make my decisions based on another human being. I need to make my decisions based on what God wants from me.
Okay.
So actually think about why this ruling is there, why God would put it, and maybe I don't understand it, but knowing that it comes from God, I would know that there's wisdom behind it. Right. I would know that there's a reason behind it, which is a greater reason than just this worldly, material world that we live in. Mm-hmm. It's about growth, it's about moving towards Him. And maybe I might actually learn something by being put in that situation which makes me closer to God. It may open up doors that I would not have necessarily thought of.
Yeah, I mean, what about the husband? Does he need to seek permission from his wife? Or is that something that, like you said, he doesn't, like he can, if he finds that it's right, he can just do it? Or Islamically, does he need to
So
get
the
permission?
fiqh, again, I think you need to look at what each merger says, but my understanding is that if he is marrying a Shia Muslim, then he doesn't need to. If he is marrying, a Sunni Muslim,
Okay.
then he does, because then it's, her rights, her status is higher because of her being a Shia, so then he needs to ask her permission.
Right, okay.
When it comes to marrying Ahlul Kitab, there cannot be a nikah there, it has to be muta anyway.
Right, okay.
So then again, there's that.
But if it's
He
someone
needs
from
to-
the same sect as you...
Sect, not same culture.
No, same sect.
Yeah, then he
then-
doesn't need to ask her permission.
He doesn't need to.
But he needs to maintain justice. And again, how do you maintain justice? If you're marrying someone and you're going to be spending 3 nights away, 3 nights with her, 3 nights with you, and then 1 night where you can't be with either because otherwise there won't be justice. Where are you going to sleep? How are you going to do it? And how are you going to explain it to your first wife?
There's
And
so
where's
many
the trust?
complications with
There
that.
is so much. And I think trust is huge as well.
Yeah.
It's like if you're going to treat your wife as a child and not trust her, and then she finds out, that's probably going to be more hurtful to her than you actually having that conversation and explaining yourself. Again, if you're doing it with the right niyyah, why can't you have that conversation and explain it?
Okay.
It's when your niyyah is not so pure that you feel like you need to go behind the person's back and do it and hope that they never find out. I don't know. I just feel like if there's a godly focused niyyah, and which you're working towards, and you and your wife have been working towards that, then surely that conversation can happen, and you can actually work out how you can both move towards Allah through this, and whether it's the right step for you together. Because although you're not part of that relationship, it will affect you. It will have a huge effect on you. And also her kids, you have to make sure that her kids and your kids get on, and she has to make sure that both the kids get on, because they're brothers and sisters.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I can't even imagine. I guess you have to either be chosen to do this or not, because I don't think everyone
It's
is
not
able
for
to
everyone, for sure. And I think
maintain
anyone who is in that situation, I would tell them that you must be an amazing human being.
Yeah, mashallah.
And, you must be so high to have that sort of strength that God has given you to be able to cope with something like that, because it is huge. It's absolutely huge, and there are so many things, so many variants that come in, which can cause so many problems, including even the community. It's like, how will others look at me? How will they judge me? It's like, will they think I'm not good enough? And a lot of it's me not being good enough is not because I think I'm not good enough. It's because how others will think of me.
Yeah.
And there's so many different things, and it's okay. And also teaching it to your children and making sure your children are totally okay with it, because their father's not done anything wrong Islamically. There's so many things. And then again, I applaud those women who are in these situations.
Indeed,
because I feel like you must be an amazing person.
Definitely. Yeah, no, you're right. Thank you so much for that, Masuma. And inshallah, hopefully that's helped the viewers and benefited you with our discussion, inshallah, today. May Allah guide us all and give us sabr, inshallah. And thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again on another episode of Dear Masuma. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.